Hello, what's good, and welcome. My name's Thomas. I go by F dot on the internet, and that's where we're here. So I guess that's what we'll be calling me. But we call this the Level Up webinar. This is one of many that we do throughout the year. This is actually our final webinar before the big show. We're live in Vegas, so I hope everybody can kind of join in with that. But today we're going to be talking about the convergence of esports and entertainment. So I'm looking forward to some real insightful commentary through our esteemed panel. We've got a bunch of different people, some artists and people behind the scenes, some people in front of the scenes, and I guess I'm kind of in between. I wear a lot of different hats, not just this Yankee hat. So we'll have a good mix of people having some good conversation here for today. As far as the format is concerned, we're going to split it up into two separate 30-minute discussions with a little short intermission so we can go ahead and, grab a drink or water or just take a breather. Sometimes you need a little bit of that for sure. But right off the bat, want to say thank you. Today we are being sponsored by Roland, and Roland, just thank you for sponsoring today's webinar. Celebrating its 50th anniversary, Roland's innovative electronic music instruments and multimedia products have fueled inspiration in artists and creators the world over. Roland's mission is not just to produce simple yet powerful tools for creativity, it's to inspire people around the world with the thrill and excitement of creative experiences that surprise, delight, and stir the soul. So I'm very excited right now to introduce Chris Wissinger, product manager and marketing over at Roland. He's going to tell us what Roland has in store for this year. And so, Chris, welcome. You and I know each other.
Oh,
And,
yes.
Straight up, very happy to see you, man. How
Good
are
to
you?
see you. Good to see you. Last time I saw you, you were here in Arlington.
That's true. Yes, it was here it was over there in Arlington.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the next time I see you, we will be
I
on the road again
will
because
see you
you
in
do a
Vegas.
lot of travel and a lot of sort of product evangelization for Roland, let's say. So
Yeah.
talk to me. What's Roland got going on these
Yeah.
days?
Well, I was just in Los Angeles. We were shooting a video last week for some exciting stuff we have coming up. I can't share too much at the moment, but it's pretty cool. So yes, I do travel quite a bit. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, you won't spill the beans
I can't.
just yet, but give me like what's the last big thing that Roland kind of rolled out that you were really proud of?
Well, earlier this year on our content creator side, we rolled out our Aerocaster product, which is making live streaming more accessible to everybody. We're using mobile phones as the cameras, super cool, super easy. Everybody's got them. Live streaming to any of your favorite platforms. So great for like doing video podcasts or music performances. That was the last big one for us, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a big avenue of kind of where Roland wants to go. The idea of like live streaming, and we'll go into depth in this almost for sure. But the idea of live streaming is not just person playing game anymore. People are really opening that up, and Roland seems to be front and center.
Yeah. We've been doing live streaming technologies for over a decade, even probably pushing close to 2 decades. Mostly in our professional audio visual division. So we have a group that has been doing live streaming and AV to professionals, houses of worship, churches, education, like this, this high end professional markets. And the last few years, we've taken that experience from our engineers and our product development teams, and we're migrating over into this consumer and prosumer space because we know live streaming. So at that pro level, we know what's needed in that space, and we're adapting it into the consumer and prosumer space. So we're really excited about that, and then of course now into this gaming thing.
That is
awesome.
a good word for it. Well,
Yeah,
Roland's certainly
awesome.
front and center as far as a lot of these initiatives are concerned. So straight up, thank you to you and your squad for supporting and
Our pleasure.
sponsoring today's webinar. But we've got a bunch of other people joining us here as well from amongst the various intersections of the convergence of esports and entertainment. Well,
Yes.
that's where our 4 panel members kind of come from. So I want to take the time to introduce them one by one. And first off the bat, Kim Meltzner. She's the esports strategist and CEO over at Destination Esports. Kim, also very good to see you as well.
F dot, right here. Too many years. We're grateful for everything you do. So it's exciting. It's exciting to be here because 3 years ago, I met Chris at the Esports Awards in 2019, which feels like a million years ago. And it was in that conversation we talked about how the excitement of music and the convergence of esports and content streaming and all of the things that were starting to evolve after 12 years of being in this, being the AKA esports mom. This has been a thrill. This moment means a lot to me because the rest of the group that you're about to meet has so much to bring to the table, and this is just exciting. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the privilege, and excited to talk esports and music. This is awesome.
Heck yeah. Following Kim, we have James Fauntleroy, singer, songwriter, and record producer. So one of the actual artists kind of coming out and joining us. Nice to meet you, man. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yo, what's up? Wow, yeah, confetti.
Heck yeah, man. What's good? How's everything? And introduce yourself. Talk to us a little bit about what you do and what you make.
I am James Fauntleroy. I'm from Inglewood. I'm in Inglewood at the 1500 Sound Academy. This is one of our classrooms. And this is a school I founded after having gone through many years in the music business, during which I have written probably 14 Rihanna songs and 5 Beyonce songs and 20 Justin Timberlake songs and 12 Bruno Mars songs. And I wrote some songs for some of my friends, my mom's dog. Also, I wrote a song for. And also, I'm a designer. I just designed the Mickey Mouse design for Disney's 100th anniversary. So I've been doing 3D modeling and graphic design for nearly a decade. And I love video games so much. OMG, I have the Famicom and the Super Nintendo button fingers. So I'm going
Nice. Love it.
Love that. Love that. A man that wears many hats for sure. So I
all
understand.
the hats.
Absolutely. Love the school as well. That's really cool. I'm definitely going to ask you some questions about starting a school and whatnot, passing it forward for sure. We got a couple more members though on the panel though. I want to introduce Markeith Anthony, strategic partners over at Roland as well. So part of the Roland family. Markeith, wonderful to meet you, my man.
What's up, my man? Good to be here. Good to see everybody. Glad to be here and representing Roland.
Absolutely. So when it comes down to strategic partnerships at Roland, I mean, at the end of the day, like partnerships, you're out here just trying to get people into the fold, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. We've been appointed our team directly from the CEO to really kind of be the disruptors here at Roland. So when you traditionally look at a music industry brand, a lot of the traditional marketing is kind of over in the machine gear space, selling synthesizers. So we kind of operate outside of, those specific elements and just really being the disruptors in the industry to kind of give Roland more of a, household name type visibility in the space. So when you're at home and you think of music, it doesn't necessarily have to align with a specific piece of product. You just think of music when you think of Roland.
Right. Expanding past the 808, so to speak. Yeah.
Right. Most definitely. So yeah, of course.
Glad to have you along. Definitely think we're going to have some fun conversations for sure, but a little bit of everything. And last but certainly not least, we got Brian Ali here, Vice President of Global Artist Relations and Strategic Partnerships over at Roland. So another individual getting people into the fold, so to speak. Brian, nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. Glad to be here.
Perfect. So very excited to kind of talk about what's going on here. And I mean, we could just kind of start off with how Roland kind of looks at the space, it enters the space, and then we'll get a little bit more organic, so to speak. This is going to be more of a round table type beat. We can just kind of have a conversation, and anybody out there watching, feel free to drop comments or questions in the chat, and we'll kind of pose them to the squad and see what everybody's got to say, because as we said, we have a lot of different folks here. Even the 3 people from Roland, different areas of Roland. Kim kind of coming from the esports business side of things. Mr. Fauntleroy, just artist boots on the ground, and me, I kind of touched everything. I guess just a brief little background of myself. I'm a full-time play-by-play commentator in esports. I've been doing so for about a decade. Prior to that, I used to make rock music and rap music. We didn't fail, but we didn't really succeed. So we had to kind of turn that page. But, I went to Long Island High School of the Arts. I do have, one or two Spotify credits out there. I made a track with Jim Jones. That's my big claim to fame, so to speak. But it's been a while. So kind of multiple avenues for me as well. So let's jump in, dive right in. And I said we'd start off with how Roland kind of looked at the space. Roland has three kind of pillars for looking at what we're doing out here. Chris, Markeith, Brian, who wants to kind of take the reins here and talk to me a little bit about Roland's three pillars of how they see what's going on?
Yeah, I can start out. Brian and Markeith will definitely have some deeper thoughts. So if we go back to Esports Awards last year, we sort of entered the space, and we sort of our story or our heritage into the gaming space started back in the 80s. So Roland is 50 years old. We've been in the video game space for about 40 years, which is a really interesting and fun story to tell. And it started with Japanese music composers writing music tracks for very popular and iconic video games of that era of the early and mid 80s. And so as we sort of fast forward to where we are today, we have other products and technologies that are being used by gamers and streamers without us even really officially coming into the space. That some of our technologies were adopted because of what they did for the gamer or for the live streamer. And so we are entering this space really in three key pillars. Everything we do will sort of focus around one of these three and potentially hit all three. Really, it's technology is number one. So this is, of course, products that we make, whether it be music creation, synthesizers. If we go back to the 80s, Japanese music composers used our synthesizers to make soundtracks. So technology, that even means content creator technology, as I mentioned earlier. Number two really is collaborations. We know we're a non-endemic brand coming into this space. And so we know and recognize that collaborations is going to be mission critical for our success as well as for the success of our partners, which is Brian and Markeith head that up. And then our third pillar for this space is really going to be around education and how we enable gamers to create create music or content create. So educating them on those. So those are our three pillars entering the space. Again, everything will kind of focus around one of those or all three. Brian or Markeith, do you have anything else to add?
I'd like to just kind of speak to how Chris was talking about how we entered that space just a few years back. And, one of those collaborations kind of just giving us more visibility in the space. We were working with the hit Instagram series. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's called Versus, which is an epic battle between two music producers or artists that kind of just go hit for hit, song for song battle, 20 songs throughout a 2-hour broadcast. But I think it was maybe back in November of 2021, we actually teamed up Versus and Call of Duty for the world premiere of the Call of Duty Vanguard launch, where we actually hosted that launch party on Versus, and Roland was providing the audio and video tech for that broadcast on Instagram, and which was highlighted a performance by the Migos. So I just bringing up a tangible collaboration of different ways of how we've tried to collaborate and integrate in that space. And utilizing our products as well.
Brian, anything going on?
Yeah, a lot going on. No, I think
I'm trying to put you on the spot if you weren't.
No, I think they answered it well. I think we're, when it comes to the collaborations, we're not an endemic brand, and so the collaborations have to be meaningful, and I think when Kim and Chris, first brought up this conversation, back in 2019, we were looking at this space, obviously just before COVID. We'd have accelerated it without the interruption, but that certainly gave us some time to piece it together, to take a strategic approach to it. Even on this call, we met James actually through education, not through music, through his academy there, and walked in the doors and went, man, there's something different going on here, and this feels this feels better, right? There's a lot of change. Tom, when you were talking in your intro, it was interesting to hear, because we're seeing that so often. You know, musicians and gaming, they go hand in hand. But we had to look as a manufacturer to say, are we serving the needs of both equally? You know, is there fusion where we could be combining technologies in the middle? You know, and I think video and audio is one where we're, at least in our spot in the market, we went the live streaming route versus, for example, you know, big audio consoles at the back stadiums to do mixing. Yeah, we really feel that the creator themselves is our focus, you know, versus that. And so that's where we turned our attention, and then we've staged our entry to market that way. And you know, we're working on multiple projects with a lot of different people in music and gaming. And in James, even right now, we have a project going on with him, which is clothing and gaming and music, and we're going to be out at the Esports Awards talking about all of it.
That's dope. I'll be there myself as well.
Great.
Just for, you know, ticket plug, esportsawards.com/tickets. We're live in Vegas. Y'all should come through. But you know, I think you guys kind of nailed two of the big things. So, you know, if we zoom out right quick, people always ask me, like, what is esports? Frankly, it's just electronic sports, and it's just that simple. But what is esports, right? And like, esports is culture is first and foremost. If we go with me here, I do a lot of comparison to that extreme sport stuff in the 90s, the skateboarding, the surfing, etc. People were selling the extreme sports. It was cool to watch a guy kickflip. It was cool to see Tony Hawk do the 900. But people were selling a lifestyle, a culture, a brand. We have PacSun and Billabong, and we're still wearing Vans, right? And so those companies realized that it was about a culture. I look at esports, and I look at the different esports organizations out there, and they sell pieces of a culture. They're a lifestyle brand. A Cloud9 fan, a FaZe Clan fan, they look a little bit different than a Team Liquid fan or an Optic Gaming fan, right? And Roland, I think, going through collaboration type stuff, clearly with the Versus program, y'all understand that culture goes hand in hand with the actual art. And so I think kind of coming from that direction is a great idea. Kim, over at Destination Esports, I know that you've done a lot of work like in the Call of Duty space, trying to, you know, bridge that gap between non-endemics and kind of show them what it is to be inside this weird world of gamer space. You know, what is the esports culture? And so, you know, how do you see these collaborations kind of fitting into what we do over here?
You know, that's the funny thing about starting 12 years ago when we built Call of Duty Black Ops 1 back in the day and watched it unfold into this mega billion-dollar industry that Activision was so carefully constructing. And being a part of that and being there on the scene when you had Hex and Hastro and Nadeshot and all those guys coming in for the first time, I've watched them grow, let alone start where they started in the beginning. And what didn't happen was nobody knew how to explain esports. And esports, really all it is the event to which the video game experience is coming together with everybody in one area. So it's more than just, it's a convergence of digital and you know, human experience. And that's what makes it so cool. But culturally it is, you know, every game is different, every player is different. And it's kind of like, I'm sure James can say this as a musician, like he's written for some of the most amazing artists out there, and each of them are extremely unique. So it's not like it's a cookie cutter approach. You have to be as creative as you do being able to understand the person to which you're working with. So for me, having raised over 1,000 pro players over multiple gaming titles, having to watch them grow, to see their good, their bad, and their ugly, collaboration was the only way I thought. And so for me, whether it was the event space or actually doing business, that's what made Roland so appealing for me, was that they thought beyond just it's a musical instrument. There was so much more. What is coming out of that? Who's the person they're working with? Brian can tell you 100 stories of everyone he's worked with and all the uniqueness that he's grown over these last 20 years. It's not a piece of a moment. It's a multitude of people coming together to make it work. So it's been really exciting to watch esports grow like it's supposed to. You know, we're at that stage now, like you even know, every time we turn around, it's something new, but the foundation hasn't changed. And that's the same with music, both sides.
Absolutely. And so trying to find that sort of middle ground, I guess, you know, is basically the conversation. You know, it's not that it's easy to find, you know, that intersection of culture and music and where do you fit in from Roland's perspective, because the artists are literally using these tools. So when it comes down to entering the esports space, like Chris alluded to it earlier, it makes sense. There's a lot that's on that we just, everything's out here, and it makes sense that Roland kind of jumps in. A lot of people, I have a lot of co-commentators that are musicians themselves. Why? Where is that overlap? James, I'll come to you, man. Like, why? Where do you think that overlap is in the world of art, and why do you think there's so many overlaps? I suppose is the question. Better said.
I have a lot of opinions about that actually, but I think the first one is I noticed that people who are sitting down a lot become expert curators of playlists. So like if you watch tutorials, if you watch people making games, playing games, doing 3D modeling, they're always listening to music while they're making, while they're creating. You need music for content. So the overlap is overwhelming just from the type of person that's interested in, and I'll say beyond interested, obsessive. An obsessive person that's close to this tends to be really serious about the music they're listening to when they're indulging in their obsession. So that's the first overlap of the person. But then on top of that, especially as we go into the future of XR, you know, and VR, AR experiences, which is spatial audio in general, that's now all the way to my first video game soundtrack that I loved, which is Sonic the Hedgehog, one of the greatest video game soundtracks to ever exist. And so from then till now, you know, we've seen different incredible collaborative experiences as far as like people putting music projects in games, all the way till now people are doing live performances in games. And so there's a lot of overlap, but I really think there's something to be said about the attention to detail that the people that are competitively playing video games have in common with the attention to detail that someone that's interested in any of the arts tends to have. So I think there's a lot of overlap and probably just as much mystery and confusion about you know, the publishing aspect, the technical aspect of how to get involved. And you know, to me, it looks like just a lot of fun opportunity, but definitely a clear bunch of connections.
I mean, I have twofold kind of thoughts here, and one is the sort of ease of use. I remember a bunch of years back, before the worlds of, you know, stream decks and things that are specific peripherals specifically made for live streaming and Twitch and this, that, and the third, the world of there were guys using drum kits to just plug in. I got a MIDI converter, and I could use this drum kit to just like clap, scream, laugh track. Now I'm gonna air horn on my Twitch stream, and this was something that, like, well, were they technically trained on these machines? Did they even know what they were before they Googled, you know, noise box? Probably not. But the ease of use through Roland products and stuff like that, and, you know, competitor products for sure, but the idea that Roland can jump in and just sort of, you can just plug in, figure it out, and push the button, and then bam, you have leveled up that stream from just a webcam like your Skyping grandma to now you've got some other elements in there with very small barriers to entry. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the products that you use in the music space can get kind of crazy, but not everything is Ableton Live. Sometimes it's just 4 boxes and a touchscreen. And so you can do that no problem. And I think that is really, really interesting as we turn the page into this new future of live streaming, particularly that term prosumer, power users, or a lot of what we see out here at Twitch. I sort of kind of know what's going on, but not really. So I can't buy the whole, you know, the whole TriCaster setup, but like, all right, I got a couple drum machines and a synth that I can make this sort of come together and work. And again, I also think that music is a deep part of our memory bank. And a lot of what you're talking about when you do marketing specifically around sports is continuing the conversation. Y'all play football on Sunday, but everybody talks about it until the next Sunday. If you didn't, if Skip Bayless wasn't out there yelling about the Cowboys every time, then people might forget about it. But when you think about the top sports in the world, if I say NBA on TNT, NBA on CBS, Sunday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, we're all thinking of these themes. We are thinking of these sounds in our head. And I think that's a big part, again, going forward as we turn the page and competitive esports turns into professional video games, turns into the CDL is just as big as a name as the MLB. I think these concepts are going to be an integral part going forward. And so when we look at the intersection of, music, entertainment, and esports, you're looking at twofold. You're looking at big picture, these big organizations that need some sort of musical push and musical support, but also just the people on the ground, whether you're streaming to become the next big streamer or not, or you're just kind of like vibing with you and your boys, like that's something that you can have access to. People can just go out and kind of buy these pieces of equipment. And so, I'll come back to the Roland folks here and pose the question, is that something you guys are thinking about in with this new chapter, is sort of like ease of use, low barrier to entry, allowing or getting non-professional people into the fold here?
Most certainly. Yeah, Tom, I'll take that one. That's literally why Markeith and I exist in the company as a team. There's two types of marketing. There's the traditional marketing, you're going into advertisings and print ads and, running commercials and so on. And then there's the influencer side, which where we're focused. And we were, back when our current CEO was the chief sales officer, I ran sales. And so we grew up under this guy who's now British born, living in Japan, CEO for Roland, and may even make an appearance at the Esports Awards. We're hoping. When he came in, though, he said something very interesting. He said that we need to stop acting like a traditional corporation. We need to engage with the users. And that's why he started our team. So he started the artist relations at Roland. He started influencer relations, and he shifted us over this way a couple years ago after talking with Kim, and said, let's find the right way to merge that. And so we've been doing nothing but sitting out in the field at Level Up events, at VidCon and TwitchCon, and just literally listening. And we do our product design by doing in-field conversations with users and then taking that information back with engineers. James is a part of that process too. And that's where, if you're sitting and watching saying, how do you come up with people on a panel, James isn't forced in. James let us into his world. That's where we've been fortunate as a company. Markeith and I have been able to sit in the back of the room and just watch and listen and pester him and bug him and his beautiful and capable staff and manager Rahel, and just understand everything about the world of a creator. And that's what we're doing on the gaming side too, because at the end of the day, if we make his life easier, we thrive as a brand. And that's the bottom line, and that is what drives us now.
Yeah, I can also expand on that. So to Brian's point about listening and observing, we spent a good portion of the COVID years doing just that, researching, listening, observing, and we learned a couple of things. I mentioned earlier the idea that we've been in the video game music space for 40 years, right? Some more practical technologies that we observed and watched were our V-Moda. We have a brand of headsets called V-Moda, which I'm wearing today. We see gamers using our V-Moda headsets with the boom mic as I'm using today. And we're not even really technically in the gaming space yet, right? And we already see this happening. And then even something as fun and as famous as our VT series of products, which is our voice transformers. Our voice transformers have been used by several gamers. We know of several very high-end gamers who are using it. I can't say at the moment, but we know several who are using our voice transformers and have been using them for years. Again, we're the observation was interesting to us, and we know as we look at these, we know coming into the space, we're on the right path because the gamers and the streamers are already using many of our technologies without us even positioning or talking to them about it.
Voice transformer, is that what it says on the tin? Is that sort of like a vocoder that is going to change?
It's sort of like this. If you can hear me, I now talk like a robot. Is that coming across that way?
Not yet.
Okay. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe
it's that one. How about that one? Is that it? Okay. I have it labeled wrong here on my box, but this is a voice transformer.
Awesome. And all right. So right away, I'm seeing this world. So recently, and I mean, I will admit this is not my sort of neighborhood, so to speak, but so it might be not as recent as I'm kind of diving in, but recently the world of VTuber has been really, really big, where the concept of I'm a streamer, you see my little webcam in the corner, people are replacing their own webcam with like an anime character or just an animated character in general, and then voicing it. And I think, so, then we have people that play a character that are anime. Bam! All of a sudden, that's something that really speaks in a tangible way to people completely unrelated to the music side of Roland. And so here's an interesting question, is that Nintendo started off making playing cards, and now they make video games. Now, still all game related. Roland is a musical instrument company. That's a brand identity. The world of, well, maybe we can make things that aren't necessarily music related, but just audio related. Is that a concern of losing brand identity, or is there an excitement about adding something new to the Roland mantra?
I'd say we would like to be thought of more as the creative company, the company for creators. I think you're absolutely right. We don't kid ourselves that most people think of us as the music company, but as Chris well pointed out, we've been in the video side of the business for quite a while too. Has it been as big a focus? Is it as well known? Certainly not, not. But did it grow rapidly in the last few years for obvious reasons? It sure did. And you know what, that forced, I can remember a conversation we had about a year into COVID where we all took a step back and said, wow, I don't think we realized just how powerful some of this stuff is, because we were diverting, so much of our attention to the music side. Running sales, you can get to your numbers easier that way, right? Everybody wants the next synth from Roland and so on. But this product allows a level of expression well beyond just musicians, and it allows us to show a creative side, that we haven't been able to. We serve creators, so this opens up a whole wide world of creators that we can now serve that we weren't before. So it is exciting, and I think that's the takeaway, Tom. We want to serve creators. Period.
Yeah.
I like that idea. Go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, I remember early on, when we partnered with Kim, we had many conversations internally, and I know we had a lot of conversation about this very, very topic. And if I'm checking my notes here, we wrote down sort of this guide sentence, if you will, not a goal, not really a positioning statement, but just something that we were just kind of jotting down as we were working through the research of this space. And we called it, what do we want to do in this space? And here's specifically what we said, again, in internal language, but I think it's important to share it since we're talking about it. We wrote, Roland, we as Roland want to connect the passion of gaming with the enjoyment to create. And so, I mean, that's exactly, to Brian's point, it's not just about music, it's about creating. Music is a piece of creation, of creating. And so it's streaming and recording your podcast or your whether that be audio only or with video, or Marquis' example earlier with Versus, right? Where we got audio video equipment sort of behind the scenes on this high end broadcast grade level event. So we're sort of all over the place. So anywhere you want to create, we want to be seen as an authority in that from a technology standpoint.
Yeah, and I'll even add too. If you don't mind, just let's go back to the days when we were doing press junkets and launches for the Call of Duty brand. back, we're talking what, 2012, 2013. And I will never forget when we had to separate Xbox from PlayStation because they would not play in the same area. And they thought that was just like the weirdest thing ever to have to deal with that. And then go one step further than that. And the bigger change was we were dealing with the press that did newspaper and more of the old school way of publishing information. And we had to set up laptops for the YouTubers. And I remember the press being beside themselves thinking, who are these YouTube guys? They don't know how to do press. We know press, right? So we had to kind of converge into that change. And you look at it today and you still see the newspaper press, but it's a different way of thinking compared to what that was back in the day, right? So now we're in a whole, now we're in a whole different world where you look at gamers who have always been there, whether that's, the older generation who played World of Warcraft that are still playing when it first came out. And they're, 30, 40 years older, and they're still going at it full speed. That's their
Why you
lifestyle,
call me out
right?
like that, Kim? Come on.
I know, but that's what I learned when I was at Blizzard. I didn't even realize the culture there until I worked there and realized the magnitude of age differences, and that generations were not just the 16 or 15-year-old or the 10-year-old playing Fortnite. We're talking like we have a huge gap of generations that are playing games, right? So you have the strategy of gaming, and you have the expression of creativity. And what Roland was becoming, for me to see it up front, was they're giving you the vehicle to express because they know expression better than anybody. And they built the digital side and they built the equipment, not just the music, to be able to build those strategies with that. And they're not just reaching the 10-year-old who's creative, they're reaching the older generation too. So you've got that whole platform that they fit right into. So the goal was to bring them in as a safe brand that actually didn't look at the gamer as a transaction, but looked at them as amazing individuals who were creative and wanted to know more and wanted to do more and wanted to deliver more. And that's what I think is most exciting about being a part of the indirect Roland family, where even just seeing James, and not to put him on the spot at all, but like, it's exciting to talk to someone of his caliber. And I haven't even met him till literally now, but what Brian shared with me and the creative side of him and the excitement and the humility but these are the players and the stakeholders that are all coming together, whether you're in a gamer or as a musician or as a creator, we're all expressing. And that's what makes this so exciting as a brand, is that they're willing to meet you no matter where you're at and how you're going to get there.
Exactly. We talk about, like, I think you bring up a good point about kind of legacy media turning their nose at new media once upon a time. And now, well, legacy media is like, hey, boy, you got 100 million viewers. How do we do that? Nobody's buying my newspaper anymore. And so, everybody has sort of had to jump into this brave new world of digital creation. And so, Markeith, you are, that intersection. You're the liaison. You are, the younger guy that understands what used to happen, but also sees the future of what is happening. And, the person before you in your position, whether it's the title or whatnot, I know is a new team, but the idea of partnerships at Roland, once upon a time, influencer management, partnerships over Roland looked very musician focused. Now, right. I imagine your job, you might be talking to people like me, not just people like Mr. Fauntleroy. And so you have to be a lot more open with that Rolodex. What kind of people do you find yourself talking to that folks out there might not expect?
Yeah, so, in that sense, it really just depends on the creators' wants and their needs at the time. I come from a fashion background too. So when you think about like how often trends change in that space, it's really the same over here in the partnership side, right? We were making a joke, I think it was maybe a week ago, right? Where we currently have, just off the top of my head, probably like over 80 plus open collaborations going on right now. And none of them are the same. They're in,
Wow.
They're in the luxury automotive space. They're in the retail fashion space. They're in the tech space. They're in, they are hitting different lines. And it's kind of like when we speak about audio and Roland being kind of like the top, innovator of that space, even me talking right now is audio. So it's like every audio plays into all these different partnerships. And really it's just more about figuring out, that's that piece level of education. And why that's so important is because it's really just more about what the other side is trying to get accomplished, you know. So that's really kind of where I see myself placed into a lot of dialogue, is really understanding, you know, the purpose, the place, the why, the vision of, you know, what we're trying to create, you know, for a bigger world audience.
Everybody seems to kind of approach with the same, you know, fuel. Everybody in this space is fueled by passion. You know, you mentioned you're working at Roland doing partnerships. You have a fashion background. Mr. Fauntleroy over here, you know, is running some education stuff, and sounds like, honestly, he'll do anything in the art space, which is something near and dear to my heart because, as I said, you know, I am a classically trained piano player turned rap producer turned metal growler, and now I'm out here doing video games. P.S. I've done graffiti art. So, like, the goal for Roland seems to, like, just give people the tools to be able to execute without a lot of needed education. And so, you know, how does your conversation, Markeith, talking to people and kind of learning what they need, how do you pass the ball over to like Roland proper and be like, all right, these guys don't necessarily understand the whole way everything is connected in the DAW on the back end, but we need to give them a product that they can utilize anyway.
Yeah.
So how do you turn that conversation into something actually tangible?
Yeah, I think it really starts with problem solving. I think is the biggest skill set in this role, is because in order for me to kind of turn it around and get Roland excited about some of the things that we are trying to do in these multiple different spaces, is giving them an understanding of why we're going there, and two, giving them a vision of the specific problem in that area and how we can come in and be a solution to that. And then we become like the heroes. Kind of, it's like really painting the pictures of how Roland becomes a hero for all these different creators and partners and collaborations by solving the problem and explaining what that problem is, why it persists, and how we come in and kind of solve that issue. That's kind of how, you know, we've strategized, you know, working through partnerships, because a lot of it does have to go back to a solution, right? They're coming to you for a solution. So it's really about understanding what that solution is, making it a problem so that we come in as the hero, as a problem solver. Because I think we go a lot further that way instead of just kind of forcing our way into different levels of partnerships.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Chris.
I jump on that too and say that, you know, from a product management standpoint, which includes, you know, development of product, R&D, bringing a product to market, marketing it, it's a two-way street for us, right? So we're not only developing things sort of in the background based on observations that we see happening, trends that we see happening in the space, but the two-way street comes in when Markeith is, as an example, going out and talking with creators and he identifies problems. He brings that back through us in the product side, and we start, you know, shaping, you know, what a future product could look like. So yeah, we're sort of tied at the hip in some examples from a development and solving problems. If we solve problems, that's the magic.
Well, it's cool. You know, it is definitely an industry led by passion. And I specifically didn't specify which industry, because I think that's what ties us together for sure, is the idea that it's out here just the bold leading the bold and trying to figure it all out for sure. That leads us directly to our kind of intermission real quick. We are going to take a brief break. I am going to grab some water myself. I invite y'all to do the same. We're going to be back in just 5 minutes, so don't go anywhere as we return very soon.
You know what they say, Val. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Let's go find out, baby.
All right, let's do it.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Esports Awards.
And the winner is Atlanta Face from the CDF, Miles Ross.
Shots.
100 Thieves. Big shout out to Esports Awards for having us out.
Welcome to the red carpet here at the Esports Awards.
You're not ready, actually. It's gonna be insane.
Esports Awards just pulled out all the stops to make this a night to remember.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live for the Esports Awards 2022 right here in Resorts World, Las Vegas.
Hello, what's good? Welcome back, friends. And just a reminder, esportsawards.com/tickets. Go ahead and buy tickets and join us in that Las Vegas. And just to all the sponsors out there, I know he said what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That's not true. We are broadcasting live all over the world, so please holler at us. Welcome back, folks. I'm F. I'm joined here by a bunch of people. And right now we're talking about the convergence of entertainment and esports. And before the jump, we were diving deep into the world of passion. And I think that's very important to kind of talk about because this is a passion-led industry. Now, obviously, that's art, duh. But one of the things that I think is different, that I think ties the world of content creation, streaming, whatever you want to call this area, and music, is that you have a lot of people that just sort of jump in. They just sort of dive in. If you want to be an actor, you sort of have to join a squad and you will get some sort of on-the-field education. Well, these days, musicians are buying a synth, plugging it in, and not leaving their room. They're Googling how to tackle their problems as they kind of approach them. And I think that's what we're seeing in the world of streaming as well. People just sort of like jump right in and dive in. And so I want to start talking. We have James Fauntleroy alongside of us here as well. Him, an accomplished musician himself. And I think he's kind of the person who go directly to, not only are you in the world of education, so you're seeing young creators for sure, but as a musician yourself, this kind of like, you know, speaks to you. The type of people that are in these spaces don't always graduate from Oberlin or Juilliard. They just know what they like to do, and sometimes it winds up being excellent.
You said what? Sometimes they want to be what?
Sometimes they just know what there are people that come through without proper training and are just passionate people, and that you don't necessarily need an education to be a musician. And I think that's the same for these streamers that are coming out. These folks aren't traditionally trained entertainers. They're just kind of performers, and how we enter this new space, I think, is very similar.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Every professional is an amateur until they put some time in. So, you know, I think there's two misunderstandings. One, that you need to be some sort of expert, especially in music, because except for here, you can't get a, you know, like any kind of diploma or anything that's gonna make you better. But you know, like it's really the result of what you're putting out. That's one thing. But then also that whether you have access to a multi-million-dollar studio or you have enough money to buy these super thoughtfully designed and affordable Roland suite of products that are coming out soon, then as long as you are holding yourself, I think that's kind of what ties creators across levels of access and exposure together is the end result. And the end result is the feeling of the person experiencing it. You know, it's the feeling from the music, it's the feeling in film, it's the feeling in video games. So all these things are kind of the magic of what we're doing. And so basically, as long as you don't suck, you know, any level of, you know-how is acceptable in this world.
Yeah. And that's where Roland can kind of, you know, enter that space, is understanding that this world of content creation and streaming and such, this, that, and a third. I mean, look at my setup. I definitely look like just one of these, like a Howard Stern or a Mike and the Mad Dog. Like, clearly I've taken my cues from folks that have done it before, but that's all we can learn from is people that have kind of jumped in this space before. And that's what streamers are turning into. You look at the biggest names in streaming. You look at the Ludwigs, and you look at the Pokemanes and all these famous streamers. Well, they're still playing Fortnite and all that, but people are tuning in for their personality, for who they are, and their commentary. Sometimes, you know, these streamers, XQC doesn't even turn on a game. He'll stream for 6 hours just talking into the microphone and giving people the tools that they need to kind of, you know, run their stream. I think is very important. And so we talked a little bit about Roland kind of getting away from just being a music company and being more of a creative company in that regard. We talked to Markeith about how he does, you know, influencer relationships on that end, and what Roland can kind of do to kind of bridge that gap. But now we got to look at the other side. And so I come to you, Kim, and esports kind of does their thing, and streamers have kind of found that their space is largely commentary based, this, that, and a third. But what can esports do to bridge that gap as well? How can not just esports, but this streaming world in general, how does our side of the table, so to speak, kind of come closer to where Roland is?
I think 90% of it is we've got to take those that are already doing well, and they need to provide pay it forward, and they need to be able to bring that next generation up and really give them what they've learned, because we've all trailblazed for a very long time, and it's not easy for the scars that we've, you know, earned along the way. But I think those scars are reminders that we need to help make that a point. And I think, as somebody who came on as the first parent in the scene, who just happened to like get this role as esports mom over the years, I've watched so many people struggle to get to that place, and all they needed were some good mentors, and they would have saved half of that time to be able to learn and grow and fail, and not fail and die, but fail and succeed. And I think that's where the challenge is that the games have always had this higher level of competition, and everybody needs to be that next pro player, but they've forgotten that they have to be their own brand. And we've talked about this for 12 years with most of these kids. The ones that are doing well found a way to become their own people and their own individual, you know, and I think that's been the challenge, is nobody knows how to do that. Bring it to this level where Roland wants to help is that I came to them 3 years ago with this idea that I'm trying to help these creative gamers find not only who they are in the gaming space, but who are they outside of the gaming space. And if you're a musician, let's go for it. If you're a content creator, let's go for it. And I think that's what made Roland so exciting, was they were like, bring it, let's go. And by the way, we have so many resources. Who do we need to tap into in order to help them be there? And then you get someone like James who comes in and says, I'm willing to do it. And look at the stature of where he's been and where he's at, with the Brian who's been doing this for 20 years. And then the rest of us who fall into this line of of trailblazing, and there's no resource that isn't available. It's how do we collaborate properly to get there?
Open communication is, well, it's a solution to a lot of things, but for our conversation here, I think it's definitely, front and foremost. I think it's just about kind of learning from everyone that's kind of been around and doing their thing. And so, James, when it comes down to your space, are you, forgive me, you work in education? Are you educating kids and the youth, or?
Our students here are post high school, so they're grown.
Sure.
We call them kids because we can't stop, but they're literal adults. And we also have, now being in education for so long, if there's anyone else in education out there, I've heard the word cohorts about 700,000 times. Cohorts are, groups of students. So I have we have K through 12 and a number of different community organization programs. For instance, there's one at this tech and gaming center called SOLA, Tech and Entrepreneurship Program. We just built a satellite version of our school in there, and it's literally a 13,000 square foot building with probably 100 computers to teach the kids about esports, and there's another 30 computers to teach them about content creation, 3D modeling, etc. We put a studio in there. Live Nation put live instruments in there. So, we're definitely trying to expose as many people at many ages as we can get our hands on, because there's something that everybody is capable of participating through.
I think that's a large part of the conversation as well, is educating the creators. We mentioned before how kind of a lot of these people in these spaces are just passionate folks, maybe naturally talented folks. You're a very funny guy, you're a very good at game girl or whatnot, but now you need the tools, so you got to Google things and this, that, and third. I think that's a big space where, Roland can get involved, is doing that sort of like on the ground education, so to speak. Maybe not as traditional as what James is doing, but hey, I noticed that your setup is kind of jank. Did you know that you can just plug something in here and push this fader up, and you don't gotta use all this software and whatnot? So Markeith, I come to you, is that obviously you do a lot of outward sort of, like I always say, product evangelization, but on the other side, are you also kind of like opening people's eyes to some of the tools that are out there that they might not know about?
Yeah, I mean, that's a key part of it. And it's a part of the organic conversational piece, because, sometimes from a corporate side, we could be kind of too overt, and trying to force products down, individuals' throats of trying to use it. So it's really more about, that organic find of, it just happens in the moment when you're seeing something that you can just, give your piece of advice there in the moment. Because, like you were saying, from a industry side, the conversations we're having versus the type of conversations we're having on the gaming side are completely different. So even us, that education is so key to us as well, is because we're trying to transform almost the way we're having dialogue in these different spaces where, talking to a piano player and his needs and wants is going to be completely different from a gamer and what his needs and wants are. And we're understanding over time, like, there's a difference between, music gifting and gaming conversations, right? So before we even kind of get in that dialogue with a gamer, that education piece of what is that value, for gamers, that's kind of equivalent to what we do in the MI space, is very key, vital for us to be able to make, some headway into this space, and, it's really just about what value do we bring in the MI that we can transfer over into this space.
What's one of the biggest surprises that you've had jumping into the gaming spaces, the gaming conversations? I think there's, a lot of preconceived notions that you might have come in with, but what's one of the bigger surprises that you've heard on that side of the conversation?
I think maybe not like surprise. Maybe it hasn't been a surprise, but I think just like the forwardness has kind of caught us off guard a little bit, which is, I think when I'm trying to explain what esports is to just some of my friends, right? and they're like, well, what is esports? And I'm like, well, do you watch Major League Baseball? Do you watch basketball? Do you watch football? Right. So just imagine you and your friends getting together to go to an arena to watch a competitive sport. Right. So now just imagine, your favorite video game or gamers going into an arena. Now they're competing and there's 20,000 people kind of in there doing that same thing. Now it's like so when you're kind of thinking of it from that standpoint, you're talking to that gamer the same way almost you would be talking to, Derek Jeter or LeBron James, because they're the LeBron James of their sport. So like, that's what we're learning over time is when we're getting into some of these dialogues is they are very forward into this where they are and kind of, where they sit, in their realm. So I think it's not a surprise, but definitely the forwardness of understanding where they are and their place in their industry.
Oh yeah, I mean it's as far as big time or whatever, been there, done that, got a T-shirt. But like the mentality, a lot of people, I'm like, oh, I'm in esports, and they're like, oh, I love video games, I love Zelda, and I'm like, that's not what we're doing here. Like 3 weeks ago, I was at the Hawks game in the State Farm Arena. 2 weeks ago, I was at the League of Legends game in the State Farm Arena. Both was sold out. You know what I mean? Like, and that's really the avenue that I think people are not necessarily. Some people are very surprised about realizing that it's more akin to trad sports. And so when you talk about like, Roland's integration into the world of sports, how does that look kind of compared to just gaming?
Yeah, I think they're two of the same, to be honest. It's just, you're finding you're finding an affinity of the reason why you either like that sport or that specific game. And then you kind of just grow an affinity to it. And it's the same way I love my favorite football team. It's the same reason why you're wearing a New York Yankees hat is because it's your affinity to that, and I find it no different from that space, which is like, why are you growing with them? And I think from a partnership side where we're actually helping that side, and this is even through dialogue with Kim and Chris, is how can we help them develop a brand, not outside of just gaming? Like, how are we coming in and helping different influencers develop a brand, a corporate presence, how we're building sponsorships around their presence? And that's kind of where we've been really just attacking it overall.
It's an entire new avenue. It's an entire new industry might be pushing it, but just barely, because it is kind of the culmination of a bunch of different industries. Esports is sports, but it can't exist without the video game creators. It can't exist without obviously the players on the field. But now also, since you're talking about electronic sports, it can't exist without the folks backstage pushing all of the buttons, pulling all of the levers, creating all of the pulleys. And so you need everybody in this big Rube Lifford machine. I didn't say that right, but it's all good. Rube Lifford's a skateboarder, not the guy I was referencing. But it's all good. My point is, there's a lot of points of contact going on, and that means there's a lot of avenues for lives to be impacted by careers. I mentioned before that I went to music school, and it was like, all right, you can be a professional musician, you can join the Philharmonic, you can work in academia, or you can flip burgers, bro. Like, that's kind of it. Now you have all these other avenues. You've got a lot of corporate gigs. You've got a whole lot of different avenues. And so, Chris, coming to you when it comes down to that sort of world, that kind of starts at a lower level. It sort of starts education-wise, understanding that there are so many new avenues. Some are the same avenues, but in a different ecosystem now, gaming. But there's just a lot of opportunities out there with music as the headline that you can collect a paycheck from.
Yeah. We and within Roland, we call this sort of career pathing, and certainly not everybody's going to go in and be a gamer at the pro level, right? Everybody dreams to be the NBA player or the NFL player, but sometimes that just doesn't happen for everyone for one of 100 reasons. it's a similar situation in esports and video game. Not everybody's going to be the pro player, but it doesn't mean you can't still have value and do something in the gaming space. And so, as it comes to, from our perspective, we see several careers that could also come out of this, whether it be teaching practical skills in video game sound design, right? Again, behind the scenes and sort of where we got our start in this space. Music creation in general, James is a perfect example of that. Live streaming, how do I become a content creator? What do I need? Not just tools, but resources. And then finally, sort of esports broadcasting. So there's a whole team of people behind the scenes that bring any of these esports tournaments. And in fact, Esports Awards is a good example too. When we do that event in Las Vegas live, there's a team of people supporting that event or the esports event. And from a product standpoint, I'm a product guy. So we have technologies in all of that right now. I have technologies in this professional esports broadcasting scene. If you sat through the intermission, you watched the video where we showcased one of our products being used in that space. And so there's a lot of career opportunities that come out of this as well. And Roland wants to be right there at the intersection of this education and career.
Thom, that's the education side of that. When you brought that up, that's what first attracted us to James with his 1500 Academy. When we went and saw how they were teaching, if you think about traditional education, right? Some go to college, some go to a trade school, some flip burgers, as you say, right? And make damn good ones doing it. But when we looked at James's school, like they teach everybody in the same room. You may be front of house, you might be the keyboard player, you might be the drummer, the songwriter, the publisher. They teach all aspects because they look at the industry, but they do that for entertainment, not just music. And then, when we look at where else to go and we look at partners like James, that he spoke about it briefly, but that outreach they have at that Sola Academy, another great example for people watching, giving back to the youth and guiding them with the right tools is a huge part of what makes, the world tick in a better way. So that particular academy he mentioned, 40% of the kids don't have internet at home. So what we do is James invented an experience. He calls it the James Fauntleroy Beat Garden. And, we go out, open air spaces, we put live streaming technology, beat making technology, musical instruments, and there's no strings attached. It's invite the kids of the community. James himself, a 4-time Grammy-winning award, artist, and all his friends come out, and all these kids and the manufacturers. We just spend a day. We do producer panels and contests, and the kids go home inspired, man. So watch for that at Esports. We're going to set up a sample one. We want to talk to people about it. It's just a way brands can come together. It's not a big sales pitch. It's just, we're not selling anything. We're going out to the community because it starts there. It starts with how we inspire people. James inspired us, so let's carry it. Let's carry it forward.
And you know what, F.
Awesome. I didn't know all that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
That's some big news, man.
Yeah.
Well, and Brian, say the word authentic, because that's one thing you guys are, is what you see is what you get. There's no secret agenda. That's the most important part.
We're pretty exposed. Yeah, we don't no secrets here, man. Let you know what we're doing.
We gotta get you out to the A. I'm down in Atlanta, James. We gotta bring you out here and do something like that in the neighborhood for sure. This is the Music City.
Why not? We can do a great one in Atlanta.
The Beat Garden. That sounds awesome.
I can't wait for James to be in Vegas, because everybody's gonna have a chance to meet him if you get the opportunity, and it's going to be pretty awesome. Esports and music and innovation and literally anything you can think of is going to open up in a way in December. So it's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds really exciting as far as I think that's really the bottom line, the thesis statement, the place to start and maybe finish is the idea that, when we talk about the convergence of X industry versus Y industry, we're usually talking about some sort of actual intersection. We're talking about, the XLR interface, so to speak, the one that's actually handshaking left side to right side. But when we're having this conversation about the convergence of esports, music, and entertainment at large, it really sounds like it's less like a tangible point on the map and more of a like an idea, like a place in the clouds, like this idea of passion, this idea of putting something out there and creating something. And I think that that's, you know, where our most powerful bonds are built, inside of the heart, inside of the mind, inside of the soul, rather than necessarily inside of the pocket and inside of the wallet. The idea is to do all five. But I think with the idea starting, you know, I think, frankly speaking, I think this is the right place to kind of start. And so, you know, Markeith, I want to kind of come to you and talk a little bit about the influencers that you work with and how they kind of shape their future. How does Roland get involved with everybody's future and kind of, you know, make the ecosystem appropriate for everyone involved, no matter which side of the coin they're coming from?
Yeah, I think again, it really just depends on the output, right? So when you focus on the output, then it kind of leads, then you can kind of reverse engineer whatever that is. And every creator, their ask and wants is different depending on the audience that they're speaking to, right? And some of the, you know, creators that we work with are at certain levels in their career. So some may just, you know, some may need a full on line of lists, including education, gear, the hands-on approach, or we could be talking to in the rock space. Like last night, I'm talking to Skunk Baxter, who's a legendary guitarist, and all he wants is just branding. That's us to just put our branding at the end of his hype reel video, just so he can show, you know, different venues and tours, and that, you know, he's affiliated. We're behind this. You know, we're promoting this. So sometimes it might be our brand affinity. It might be some products. It might be us calling down to a backline company and saying such and such artist is, you know, endorsed by Roland so they can get a discount on a keyboard. It's so many different ways where we can like insert into like a creative's career and really just advance it. But like I said, it's really just dictated on the specifics of the output. And then we usually just reverse engineer it from there. And that's kind of why the conversations are so different. You know, can you guys, you know, we wanted to give a example, like we were talking to the World Surf League, for example, and, you know, these are surfers and no one could really quite understand the intersection between music and surfing. But then when you go down to an event, you find out that all the top world-class athletes in surfing, you know what they love to do once they're done? They love to go into a small room and just jam together like it's a bonfire. So they came and asked and said, hey, can we just get like a small jam session for, so ask is just differently depending on whatever that creator's output is and what they're envisioning.
I like that. It's about that individual kind of approach and everything kind of involved there. And, you know, we're kind of coming down to the wire here. I want to leave everything here. I want to give the mic over to James real quick. Talking about, you know, boots on the ground, real artistry, man. Like you are the one in this room. I could fake it. You're the one actually doing it out here and also passing it on to everybody else. And so, like, honestly, we all are just a little bit, but that's a big philosophical conversation. That said, you know, you're the one out here, you know, doing it. And so you're the one, you know what yesterday looked like, you know what today looks like. Do you know what tomorrow looks like for the world of the entertainer, the creator, what that word means, what it used to mean, and what it will mean? Big picture. We're talking a lot of different disciplines here. How does the artist of today become the artist of tomorrow?
I think we're seeing it now. You know, everything that's come, there's always a lot of hints before it gets to, you know, like widespread adoption. So I think that as the spatial audio world is pushing their awesome agenda and priorities, we'll see a lot more people learning how to or being aware of how to incorporate the experience of spatial audio in the gameplay and in the experience the user is having. But I also think that for all of these different types of game communities that are being created, blockchain wise and otherwise, I think we'll start seeing a lot of community lifted acts and creatives and executives and businesses and all these other types of things really sprouting up. So I think one thing, if you guys out there are coming to Vegas, you can stop me, and I would love to talk about publishing and television, film, and video game syncs for 17 hours straight. That's my record so far. But I would say that in addition to the artist, the front facing person, we're going to see a wave of a new community of like music business equivalents dedicated to video game audio. We're going to see a wave of people whose jobs are mixing in 3D, a wave of people whose jobs are A&R. Like for instance, the first song that songs that I worked on for a game were probably Grand Theft Auto 5, which we talked directly to Rockstar to put some of the songs on those radio stations. And now if you go to a publisher, which for the people watching, publishing is how you get that money. So if you talk to a publisher, they have a TV and film sync department, and that's who handles the game department. And some publishers don't even have a dedicated video game person, or don't even necessarily have someone with experience or understanding of how the money is made. So I believe that in the future, those departments and people being aware of that and I think it's going to be so much money, you're not going to be able to ignore what's going on that side. So that's what I see.
Love to see it. Sounds like more space.
Yeah, I'll be there with lots of money just coming out of my pocket. Crypto.
We'll just keep adding chains as we keep adding plaques onto the wall. Absolutely.
Legends and just that's what I'm doing.
No, for real. Definitely. What I see is that, once upon a time there were a limited amount of seats at the table, and trust me, there still are, but we're just adding chairs, we're just adding plates, and pretty much everybody's going to get a chance to eat. And I think Roland gets to be a big part of that as they continue to arm, the soldiers of the artist revolution with actual products to use. And we push forward into this, brave new world of digital creation, whatever that means, because I think there's a lot to be discovered for sure. And so, thank you everybody kind of for joining us and having some conversation about this next chapter in artistry for sure. I want to give a big thank you to Roland and everybody on our panel. Kim Meltzner, thank you so much for joining us. She's esports strategist and CEO at Destination Esports. Chris Wissinger, product manager and marketing over at Roland. James Fauntleroy, my main man, 1500 Sound Academy co-founder, singer, songwriter, record producer, tons of accolades. Love to have you here. Mark Heath Anthony, strategic partnerships over at Roland. And Brian, vice president of global artist relationships and strategic partnerships at Roland. I think we had a really good panel here, kind of nailing a lot of the different sectors and intersections of what it is that we do. James said partnership or publishing is where the money is made. Every single one of these people need to be involved in the machine in order for that money to make it from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E to point F, et cetera, because that's the way the world of business works, baby. And so thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate you guys hanging out here and learning along with us. As we said, the show's going to be live in Vegas Resort World, one of the most expensive places ever built. And now it's time to take it over with gamers. So I'm going to be there. If you see me, try to make me look cool, I'll give you a high five. But definitely, jokes aside, I really appreciate everybody hanging out for our last webinar of the year. Keep an eye in 2023 as we continue to get excellent people with excellent ideas in excellent spaces. And thank you for being excellent. We will see you in Vegas. Peace and much love to you.